One Day in Montreux. A short story to the Billionaire boss romance series, The Salamander. Misha, Quinn. Misha, Quinn. One day in Montreux. The bright sun was shining mercilessly. There was nothing outside the balcony of their room in this old hotel. Nothing to distract Ella from the way Graham was looking at her. The lovers met yesterday and still could not believe their lives were going together again. And not just go but race like racehorses in a competition. Ella lay in bed, gazing tenderly at her lover. What happened yesterday? Everything. Her despair, then her humility. Oh God, Graham's appearance right in front of her in the hotel pool, where she had bathed at night. Of course they spent the whole night together. They thought they would spend the entire day here, without leaving the room. And the next day, and the next. However, it is impossible to live like this, you have to do something else. But what? Thunder did not seem to have any intention of leaving the room, but Ella had already realized that she would have to take matters into her own hands. The woman turned to her lover and jokingly asked, "Graham, honey, are we ever going to get out of here? There is so much going on around here. I would like to see the neighborhood and go to a jazz concert." Graham responded immediately. "Ella, of course, we will go see whatever you want. But now come to me. I cannot tear myself away from your eyes as sparkling as diamonds." Ella realized no need to resist and fell back into Graham's arms. When the young men left their hotel room, it was already noon. But it did not disturb them. The evening events had just begun, and they were only leaving the hotel for a meal. The hotel served excellent food, but they wanted something more local, the simple food of the mountain shepherds, a fondue. At the hotel, Ella and Graham got different addresses. Finally, after hailing a cab, they started at the farthest place where they served fondue. It was not the cheese fondue that foreigners were used to, but pieces of raw meat that were dipped into a boiling well-salted broth with spices, local aromatic mountain herbs. All this beauty was served on the table, a pot with a fire under it to heat the broth, sticks, skewers, on which one had to hook thinly sliced pieces of beef and dip them into the boiling broth. It took less than a minute to cook a piece of meat, and you could eat it carefully, careful not to burn your lips. Ella and Graham enjoyed the process as if they had just walked through the high valleys, herding the cows and leading them to the watering hole and the barn. In fact, from time to time, high and low tinkling sounds were heard from the slopes surrounding this tavern. It was the sound of special bells worn on the collars of light brown cows with a creamy white muzzle, a dark nose and dark blue eye pigmentation. This coloring of the cows made it easy to spot them in the bright green grass that carpeted the lower slopes of the surrounding mountains and valleys. The ringing of those bells was so enchanting. It was as if Ella and Graham had been whisked back to the Middle Ages. Nothing about this chalet's interior or exterior hinted at its modernity, except for the taxi waiting for them in the courtyard. The tavern was attached to the buildings of the chalet, which looked like it had been there for centuries. The chalet was empty, except for Ella and Graham. The owner of the place, an elderly Swiss man, kindly placed his guests in the best place. The best table for guests was by the window, overlooking the gorgeous view of the mountain slopes and their peaks, covered with snow white despite the height of summer. The white slopes of the peaks seemed to merge with the bright blue sky, and sometimes it seemed as if their snowcaps flew off their tops and continued their journey through the air. Light clouds were flying at the same height as the snowy peaks. It all seemed painted, like in a fairy tale. Ella had never seen real Rocky Mountains before, and now she enjoyed seeing them. Looking at the mountains, she thought of the eternal beauty that never dies. The young woman occasionally touched Graham's hand with hers, and he responded with a gentle shake. He understood Ella was struck by the surrounding beauty. He had seen it all more than once, but now everything around him seemed beautiful too. It was as if he were seeing it all anew, for he was beginning a new life with Ella, the woman he loved. After tasting all the delicacies the chalet owner offered, including a couple of glasses of excellent local white wine, the young people said goodbye to the hospitable host. Then, getting into a cab waiting for them, Ella and Graham continued their journey up the mountain slopes. Now the road led them back to the valley, to the shore of Lake Geneva. Graham and Ella got out of the cab at the lakefront, and holding hands, walked along the cobblestone sidewalk along the lake shore. The lake's water was clear and shimmered in the sun in all shades of turquoise. Around it was planted a variety of plants that seemed to bloom all at the same time. Or they had been blooming all summer. Ella was not much of a botanist, but she realized that there were beautiful flower specimens. She enjoyed seeing them and the scents that flew from everywhere, like in the best perfume stores in her hometown. And here, all this beauty was growing in the street. The pair of lovers walked up to the Freddie Mercury monument and chiseled, reading the inscription on the memorial. Then, of course, there was humming the tunes of the band's songs, in which he was the lead singer. Graham put his arm around Ella's waist and led her along the promenade. They saw the tent, and Graham said to Ella as they entered it, "You wanted to hear jazz? We can get into a concert with some of the best bands in the world right now. And in a day, they will play a festival, and you cannot get in there without pre-purchase tickets. So I did not think you would be interested in this festival, otherwise, I would be ready and we would have tickets." There was a note of guilt in Graham's voice, as if he had made an oversight. Ella hastened to assure him. "What are you talking about? I do not care what I am listening to right now. What is important is that we are together." Graham smiled happily, understanding why she was encouraging him now. "I always get the tickets I want and the seats I want. And now we are going to listen to the concert like regular people, without my connections." Ella laughed, answering, "What do you say, like ordinary people? I am the most ordinary. You know that. So think nothing is unnecessary, let us go listen to music. And I will kiss you, though you know I dislike doing it in front of everyone." Ella, not letting Graham answer, stood on tiptoe, wrapped her arms around his broad shoulders, and touched her lips to his. He responded, wrapping his arms around her waist, so that she could not have pulled away even if she wanted to. But Ella did not wish for any of this. She felt so good and at ease with him, her lover. The pair stopped in a kiss as pure and natural and deserving of being between them as the lake and the surrounding flowers. Yet their tender kiss did not seem ordinary to anyone around them. People, upon noticing them, smiled and went on leisurely about their business, leaving an enlightened smile on their faces at seeing someone around them so happy. Yes, Ella and Graham were happy. The jazz concert began, so Graham and Ella went into the tent. They enjoyed a couple of hours of skillful performances of jazz compositions. There were well-known jazz compositions newly created by this musical group. Ella did not know you could play like that with all your heart, improvising and looking the audience right in the eye. She needed to understand how they could play such complicated things and consider the audience. But since Ella herself did not know how to play musical instruments, it seemed to her the height of virtuosity. Of course, she did not realize that hours, days, and years of performance brought this confidence, this drive and virtuosity. But as a listener, it took her breath away, and standing at the stage where the musicians were playing, holding her cocktail glass in her hand, she danced to the beat of the music. Graham was there to save her if someone dancing beside them accidentally touched her. Standing behind Ella, he put his arm around Ella's shoulders and pressed her a little against him. But really, he was showing everyone, "She is mine." And the other men perfectly understood this language of the pose of a man who protects and guards his woman. The concert was over. Graham led a somewhat tired but contented Ella out of the marquee concert hall, and they strolled back along the boardwalk toward the cab station. The warm air, warmed by the afternoon's scorching sun, rose from the embankment sidewalk. The flowers all around seemed to exude some lovely fragrance. Behind the mountains, the sun had already set. Its rays illuminated only the one ridge, which appeared to be a pointed streak of white and orange, lifted by someone high above the almost purple smooth surface of the lake. Ella stopped Graham with her hand and stepped forward to the curb that fenced off the embankment. The edge of the water by the shore seemed almost black. It was as if the sun had let out its last breath, its light slipping from the snow-capped mountains, and suddenly the velvet darkness of night hung over the lake. The singing of some night birds could be heard in the bushes. Ella turned to Graham and said, looking at him fondly, "That is the end of our first day together. Our real first day together." Graham, understanding her feelings, quietly replied, "The first but not the last. We have our whole lives ahead of us. Let us go to the hotel. They are already waiting for us." "What is it? Who is waiting for us there?" Ella interrogated in surprise, not moving from her seat. "Not who but what. We are having dinner for two, in a private office at our hotel. I do not want anyone to disturb our conversation." Satisfied with the surprise, Graham replied. Ella looked at him anxiously. "Conversation? About what? Have not we talked enough? I thought everything was all right." Graham hastened to reassure her. "Do not think about it. It is just a place and a time for us to talk. A time for the two of us. I want to spend time with you and get to know you better. On this day alone, I have learned so much what you love and enjoy that I realized I knew almost nothing about you until now." "But that did not stop you from falling in love with me, did it?" Ella asked slyly, looking at Graham sideways. He answered, almost embarrassed, which was completely uncharacteristic of him. "Yes, I thought I knew you. But now I realized you are even more special than I imagined. And that makes me happy. I was not wrong about you. I love you just the way you are." Ella took Graham's hand with both hands, pressed it to her heart, and said in an almost whisper, "You are special. I knew it as soon as I saw you. I never had the chance to tell you. We were always playing a game to see who would win. You do not need to win. You need understanding." Ella waited a moment, still holding Graham's hand to her heart, and then she continued. "I love you too. I love you with all my soul. Sometimes this love hurts me, but I love you. But I am strong, I can handle it, you know that. So let us go. We have a lot to talk about." Ella let go of Graham's arm, and he put his arm around her shoulders. They strolled along the lake promenade. Their silhouettes were still visible on the embankment in the light of the street lamps. Then the darkness of evening engulfed them. The scents of roses and magnolias accompanied them for a long time, not letting them leave the promenade. Or maybe Ella and Graham did not go to their hotel for dinner. After all, they could talk as they were, strolling through the evening mountain town's quiet, narrow, steep streets. The end. From the author. Is this a happy end? Maybe yes, maybe not. Perhaps this is just one of many happy moments in their life. If you are interested in the complete love story of Ella and Graham, you may read more. The Salamander Billionaire Boss Romance Series. Please find information about the author and books by the author on the next page. Greater than, also by Misha, Quinn. Dreams, a fantasy romance on the pre-order release in less than greater than 2023. One Day in Montreux, a short story to the Billionaire Boss Romance series, The Salamander. The Lonely CEO, a billionaire boss romance. The Independent Woman, a billionaire boss romance. The Return Game, a billionaire boss romance. The Christmas Gift, a billionaire boss romance. The Salamander series box set books 1-4, a billionaire boss romance. Women's Secrets, a prequel to the sweet later in life, contemporary romance series. anything can happen. A sweet friend to lovers later in life, contemporary romance. Our time to love, a sweet opposites attract later in life, contemporary romance. Love is everything, a sweet enemies to lovers later in life, contemporary romance. Contemporary and Fantasy Short Romantic Stories series by Misha Quinn. About the author. Misha Quinn is a pen name of an independently published contemporary and fantasy romance author from Finland, with over 10 novels, novellas, and short stories published so far. With Misha's wide life experience, love of practical psychology, and well-knowing both the creative arts and business world, she likes to create romantic stories with a pinch of adventures, suspense, and paranormal events. Misha's heroines are mostly strong women, or they are getting stronger during their life lessons.